Welcome back. I'm Nicole Holland, your host, and I am so excited to have with me today Frank Bria. I'm going to give you his bio, tell you a little bit about him. But before I do, I just want to make sure that you guys know Frank and I have been yapping for 2 hours now?
I was going to say, you probably don't want to announce that you have like 2 hour pre-briefings with every guest.
Oh my gosh. I love this man. This man he's been so instrumental. He's just such a generous person and so supportive. And we got to meet, even though I'd known of him, but we met and I didn't know he was Frank Bria. And we were chatting at a live event earlier this year, like back at the beginning of the year. And he was just so inspiring, and he followed up with me, or I followed up with him. He gave me the opportunity to follow up with him, and he had offered me some support. And that's something that I have historically struggled with. And one of the words for this year, we're recording in 2018. I'm not sure if this interview is going live in 2018 or 2019, but at the beginning of the year, I did Chris Brogan's 3 words challenge. And so one of the words that I wanted to focus on for this year was receive. And so normally I would not have said yes to somebody's generous offer. I would have said thank you, but I never would have followed up. But I decided, you know what? I am in receiving mode. And so I did. And he shared a training that he had done with me. And that was really the spark that I needed to up-level so many ways this year in my life and in my business. And so we've been catching up in the last 2 hours. And so now I'm a little bit like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but it's going to be perfect. So, Frank, before I give you the floor, I just want to get this bio out so that everybody knows. Frank Bria began his entrepreneurial career in the financial services technology sector. He worked with several startups, some selling for hundreds of millions of dollars and some crashing in flames. His experience includes helping some of the largest corporations on 5 continents to grow their businesses by making a real impact on their customers and turning that into a scalable offering. Frank now turns that experience to the small business sector. He works with consultants and business authors to pivot away from project-based and hourly revenue, basically trading time for money. Frank's clients build their businesses around productized services where you leverage your time across multiple clients, not just one. He's the author of the internationally best-selling book, Scale: How to Grow Your Business by Working Less, and the father of 3 beautiful daughters. And just, again, such a pleasure, a true pleasure to have Frank with us. So, hey.
Hey, Nicole, thanks so much. That's just really heartfelt welcome. I love that. And it's an honor to be on your show. So thanks so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. And it is heartfelt. I told you when we hopped on the call, which is kind of the start of the 2-hour catch up, how impactful that gesture was. And so I think it's just also a nice thing to be able to share with people, with my listeners, that you never know what kind of impact you're making. You don't have to do a lot, but taking the time to get to know somebody, and just sharing with them the value, something that you've already created, can change somebody's life. And so I know you mentioned that you get that feedback a lot, and I think that just speaks to who you are, and I'm excited to introduce my audience to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
For sure. So aside from the bio, or in addition to the bio, I should say, do you want to just kind of give me a synopsis so our listeners know really how you're showing up these days, serving and supporting your people?
Yeah,
and who
sure.
your people are, like a little bit more about who they are and how you help them.
Absolutely. So look, basically I would say service business owners, management consultants, corporate service providers hire me to help them break out of a 6-figure hamster wheel, essentially, and move into a 7-figure position by solving this problem of moving into a scalable service, right? That productized service, which people are like, huh? What do you mean productized service? Is most people who do bigger project work know it can be very time intensive. It can be very personal, energy intensive, not just the time itself, but very draining, because people who are true service providers, give their heart and soul to their client. They want to make sure they get success. The problem is that that's not really replicatable. And what most of these consultants, authors, service providers end up doing is they end up just selling themselves as the product, right? I'm the product. So we fix that. We we create essentially what I call a high ticket program, which is a scalable productized offering, which still delivers that high level of value for the client, but does so in a way that's repeatable and doesn't involve one-on-one coaching or custom project work or whatever. It is a repeatable process.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So well, first of all, how long have you been doing this model for, and how did you come to realize this was the way to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually started off in academics. Most people don't know I was a math teacher for a while at the university level. So I was getting my PhD in math. I was going to go teach college someplace. I was actually out at Purdue University getting my PhD. So I was in the Midwest. I was going to go to Chicago, going to be a math teacher. And then the assistant dean said, Frank, you're doing so well. We're ready to get you to your next level. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to get you a postdoctoral position in University of Chicago. You're going to live in basement junior faculty apartment housing, and it'll be a $27,000 a year salary. And I was like, where's the door? So I hate to sound so like crass about it, but it was sort of a shocker to me that that was how it was going to be. So I immediately moved into consulting. I left academics and I went up to Chicago anyway, except I got a job making way more than that as a consultant, and started working in data and analytics in the financial services space. That pivoted over to banking, and then I was involved in a software startup, which actually brought me to Phoenix, which was involved in getting data and analytics, mathematical kind of software up and running in banking. We sold that off and did really well with that exit, and then did a couple of other software startups after that. But all the while, that process had kind of positioned me as a thought leader in the space, and I ended up getting a lot of consulting contracts out of that. So fast forward a couple of years as that consulting work really took off, I was flying all over the globe. I was the guy who was like, Frank, we need you in Johannesburg in 3 days, kind of guy. And I remember one time being stopped. I was leaving Israel and they were like, for some reason, I didn't have my security letter with me at the time. So they put me through the regular ringer of questions and they started looking at my passport and they're like, what do you do again? And I'm like, I'm a consultant, which of course is secret code for a spy, apparently. Actually, my kids thought I was a spy for years. So, and they pull me over to the side. They're like, yeah, this is no way you have this many stamps. Like, what were you doing in the Emirates? And I'm like, well, that was actually a Dubai stopover on the way between Mumbai and Moscow. And they're like, yeah, you're in the other line. So it was way intense. But one thing happened though. I just realized I wasn't home. Like I wasn't, and all my friends were doing cool stuff and my kids were going up without me. And I realized, hey, this isn't really why I got into this in the first place. I mean, the whole reason you start a business is to design a lifestyle that fits essentially your priorities. And while it feels cool to be the hero and to fly all over the place and, to have the airlines greet you by name when you enter the plane, it just wasn't fun anymore. It got exhausting. And so I said, okay, well, that's it. I'm not traveling anymore. So I basically plopped myself down. I wrote an email to all my clients. Effective immediately, I won't be attending meetings in person. And I lost half my clients, like instantly. And so then I'm like, okay, well, let's come up with a better way to do this. So I started digging around online and I all the internet marketing stuff. And I'm like, that's it, internet marketing. Like that's the ticket. That's the answer. And so I put out my first like $300 information product because that's what everyone was teaching me to do. Right. And I lost the other half of my clients. So because they were like, wait a minute, like we've been paying you like $350,000 a year, to our consulting. You come out with a 300, like what's wrong? Something like did you hit your head? What happened? So moments like that cause you to do a little reflection. So I thought about it and I'm like, you know what? As I've been consulting all over the globe, it's all been about creating some kind of scalable offering for them. Like that's what they do. I've worked with these large service organizations and helped them productize what they do. I'm like, why am I not taking my own advice here? And so, fortunately or unfortunately, is depending on how you look at it, I had enough exposure to the internet marketing world that I could see, once I put my consultant hat back on, I could see everything that was wrong with a lot of that garbage that used to be taught a lot, not so much anymore, but there's still a lot of that garbage out there where it's like, hey, cheapen it down, to create some kind of a PDF you can sell for $300. Then if you're lucky, you'll land one-on-one client work. And that's where the real money is to do this one-on-one work. And I'm like, no, it's not the answer at all. I mean, look at any successful company. They just don't do that. They don't do that. They have a productized service. They know exactly what they create and they kick that out. So I started, I guess back in, I'm thinking about it, 2013, I think, about 5 years now, working with entrepreneurs in that space and helping them figure it out. So I went through the steps myself, and then I was like, hey, okay, I know how to now adapt what I was doing in the Fortune 500 world to entrepreneurs, and started teaching them how to do that.
I love it. Love it. That's just so exciting and interesting. And so now is it the majority of your work is online, or is it all of your work is online?
It's vast majority. Yeah. I'll still take an occasional project I find like really, really fun. I'll land, a high 6-figure or 7-figure contract or something over, and it's like an advisory kind of a contract. Most of it's still remote. Occasionally I'll go out for meetings, but vast majority of it's still remote. I've lost all my status on my airlines. Like I'm a nobody. They don't know who I am anymore. But that's okay, because now I have time to go do fun stuff and do the things that really matter.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. So, okay, I don't even know where to go from here, because I'm like, okay, I am so curious about how the math thing, and I'm also curious about like how you left academia and started consulting, because like that's a jump. Like most people don't just go, I'm gonna be a consultant, and then all of a sudden they're a consultant. Like right. It just so, and like what you're doing today. So there's just so many different places we could go, and I feel like, for the benefit of my audience, probably going forward rather than back with you.
Yeah.
So I've already asked you and you've already said yes. We're going to do a full master class, so where we can actually teach some stuff. But sure. I want to dig into kind of your life a little bit, if that's okay.
You got it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So as you were saying, wait a minute, this is not the way to do it, I've got a better way. How did you put that out there? And were you met with resistance, or was it like were you automatically right away, were people like, yes, and celebrating what you were saying? Like, how did you get started with that?
Yeah. It's funny, as most things like this are, it's a little of both, right? So one of the first things that I did is I kind of put my stake in the ground and declared like, look, if you have really something of value to offer your audience, you should be paid your value, right? So I started telling people, I thought this was a low bar. I was like, listen, there's no reason you should be paid less than $10,000 for delivering some kind of valuable service. And for me, that was kind of like, that's reasonable, right? Like my consulting contracts are usually much higher than that. So I figured that's a good place to start. I got a lot of like jaws dropping to the ground when I said that. People are like, wait a minute, like, so I called that high ticket. I said high ticket is over 10K. People are like, no, high ticket's like over $1,000. I'm like, no, we have a failure to communicate. This is not the same thing. So I definitely had a little bit of resistance there. The other thing is I teach a completely upended model about how to build your business. A lot of people feel like you need to start small. You need to gain some traction. You need to put something inexpensive out there to get your name out, start generating some money. And then at some point, you can kind of then, once your audience is big enough, you can kind of start bumping up from there. And I'm not now the only one who says that's not the way to do it. But I was, I think, one of the first to say that's upside down and completely backwards. If I was going into a Fortune 500 company, that's exactly the opposite of what I would tell them to do. What I would tell them to do is first come up with the big, bold promise that you're going to reach, and that should be your core offering. All the rest of that stuff you can do later when the audience is bigger. And mathematically, you can show why one works and one doesn't work. A lot of people who have tried that model, who have tried to start small and go up, will tell you it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of hassle, and it takes forever. And it seems like you're always pushing a boulder uphill. But if you go the other way, the only thing really standing in your way is yourself. And that does end up being the thing where a lot of people say to me when I sit down with them, well, first of all, when they hear that message, the first thing they often say is, I can't do that. Like, I don't have anything to sell that's expensive. Like, I can't pull it off. And then when I sit down with them for a while and we start fleshing it out, yeah, like 99% of the time, it's like, no, there's totally something obvious here that's definitely worth more than $10,000. In some cases, it's worth $50,000 or $100,000, right? And it's just because people are sort of in this mindset of small and I'm just starting and who am I? It's imposter syndrome monetized. And that's a bad place to be, right? Imposter syndrome by itself.
Let me ask you about that. Yeah, because imposter syndrome monetized. And sorry, my cat is he's needing to visit us today. Did you have that experience at all, even though you were coming from a totally different place and saying like 10,000, that's a starting point, not like did you at any point when you were getting into this space experience that?
Oh, sure. I think anyone who says that they don't is lying or is a sociopath, one of the two. Like, definitely for sure. Like, first of all, after all of my consulting clients left me that I was like actually going out and visiting, yeah, I mean, you sit there and you're like, oh, did I screw this up? Maybe I have no idea what I'm doing. And, I'm going to go after a different market and I'm going to start talking to small business owners. And what do I have to tell them? Like, I'm just a corporate guy, right? It's so funny because other people look at that because they've told me this before. They're like, Frank, you have some amazing experience. You've sold stuff for like $15 million. Like, that's amazing background. And I looked at it from the standpoint of, what do I have to share with entrepreneurs, And of course, that's crazy. It's insane. And we all do it to ourselves. But yeah, initially I was like, well, I'm going to have to do the same thing. I'm starting in a new market. I have to do something small to get the word out. And people that I respected and trusted and were doing quite well in business were teaching me to do that. And so I believed them. And I spent a little bit of time, probably more time than I would have liked to have been, in this space of that's not working. It must be me. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are there, right? When you are executing bad strategy and it doesn't work, we don't blame the strategy. We blame ourselves. And
I think there's a lot of people what I experienced when I first started my online business and left corrections was that's what they were telling me. They were telling me the problem was me,
right?
Because this is a proven system. This is a formula. Anybody can do it. All you have to do is follow what we're teaching you. And you're clearly not doing it right. So it's a problem with you. And that was messaging.
Exactly. And in the environment of hustle, it's you're not working hard enough. You just don't, it's this damning connection of concepts, which is really bad for entrepreneurs everywhere. First, you have to kill yourself to get your business off the ground. That's like the first principle they tell you. Second, if it's not working, then you're not working hard enough at it. And third, if you're not working hard enough at it, then you really just don't care. You must not really care about this. This must not be a priority to you. And I think that toxic connection is so bad for entrepreneurs. It's just awful.
Can I just throw something in there too?
Yeah,
That
please.
sparked in my mind. What kills me even, like, because those messages are coming back and I see this all the time, right? And what kills me the most is the people generally telling you that are the people who can't make it on their own as business owners. So I'm sorry, maybe that's a little harsh, but that's how I see it. You're a coach, but you couldn't get your own practice up. So instead you're working for peanuts for somebody who's selling at a very big price.
Totally.
And you're the one telling the person who's invested and trying that they're not good enough. Like that's something that's baffled me from the time I came into this online space.
There's a lot of that out there for sure. And there's a more insidious version of this. I mean, what you're saying is you need to investigate the motives of the person who's telling you this, right? And it goes all the way up the chain. So, this hustle, you have to kill yourself has been sort of like, cultized, if you will, in like the Silicon Valley area. And so I'll speak about tech startups because I just happen to know it. I've built tech startups. I've raised money out there. Like I know how that works. And so you'll get, and this drives me nuts. You see these business articles of like, I didn't want to pick on people by name, but like the Mark Zuckerbergs, right? The folks out of Yahoo and Facebook and Google, and they give speeches. And they give speeches like, you want something, you gotta kill yourself, you gotta live out of your car, all this kind of stuff. But here's the dirty little secret. Their audience is their employees. They're trying to motivate their employees to kill themselves for their own business. And so people look at those talks and they go, oh, well, if Mark Zuckerberg says you have to kill yourself for your dream, I guess you have to kill yourself for your dream. But no, I mean, you got to understand his motives are he's trying to get his workers to kill themselves for his dream. And, I'm not trying to bash Facebook, but that attitude is really rampant in Silicon Valley. And I reject it wholesale. It's garbage. Like it's garbage, garbage, garbage. So, there are definitely entrepreneurs out there who make their living telling people to bust their butts and get it done. And there's definitely a role for accountability in, getting your business off the ground, but not at the expense of the quality of life.
So when you did or do, I mean, because this is, as I find, it's a forever thing. It's not just a certain point. We always have the imposter syndrome creep up in different things every time we're looking to hit a next level or, new thing. Everyone I've interviewed, right? So it's not like it's specific to anybody at any stage of their life or business. So when you've had those thoughts happen that are, better, but emotionally it like creeps in and you get the stinking thinking. What have you done personally to overcome that?
Yeah, that is a great question. And yes, like knowing better makes it actually worse because then you're stuck with imposter syndrome and you're saying to yourself, I know better than to being stuck here. Dang it. I really must suck at this. You know what? There's only one thing that I have ever found that works for me. And I know other people have different ways around this, but I have to surround myself with people who know me and know my value. And when I get stuck there, I have to be vulnerable enough to say I'm stuck there. I have every single time I've ever made an exponential leap in my business, it's because I raised my hand to the people around me who know me and love me and care about me and said, I need help. I'm stuck. And everybody's there. There's nothing wrong with it. And in the internet marketing world, there's this weird counterweight on being able to do that because if you're helping other people build businesses, you can't have problems building businesses, right? Like if you're having trouble building your own business, why are you going to be able to build mine? So this transparency around you suck at this, that's not good. That's not healthy. And that attitude keeps us stuck. And we have to get out of it. It's not true. Everybody needs a mentor. Michael Jordan needs a basketball coach. Like everybody needs someone to work with who can sit from the outside perspective in and look and say, hey, you're not looking at this right because your own mindset's getting in the way. And so, one of the reasons why, as part of, when I introduce myself, I tell people like I've crashed companies into the ground. I've totally screwed up and crashed them into the ground. And interestingly enough, I'll make a kind of side comment on this. When I was raising money in Silicon Valley, and one time we were going for a $6 million raise for a new company. I said that to them. I said, by the way, you need to know, this last exit was super profitable, but I've had other companies that I've crashed into the ground and we've had to lay off employees and it was really sad and awful and ugly. And the venture capitalist sort of smiled and he goes, good, we don't give money to people who haven't failed. Because he said, people who've never failed think they're gods and think they're never going to make a mistake and they're not coachable. They don't take advice. He's like, those people tend to not turn out to be very good CEOs. So that's kind of an interesting twist on that, where I was like, hey, I was trying to like let them know and warn them about me, when in fact that's to them what was a plus. So we closed that round of funding and got that company off the ground.
Fantastic. I love it. Okay. So you talk about mentors. How do you go about finding mentors? I mean, we can talk now. How do you, or if you think it would be of value when you weren't there yet?
Yeah.
How did you?
Sure.
Maybe what do you recommend for other people when they don't have that circle of, because the people that they're surrounded with, they love them, but aren't necessarily supportive because they don't really understand what they're going through. And maybe Johnny has failed at every undertaking, but he's truly like committed to building his dreams. And this time he's doing it. And while he's doing it, his family doesn't understand. So how do you find those people to lean on?
Yeah. And I'll say that like what I thought was true early on turns out not to be true. And I've got sort of a different opinion about it. So when I first started, this is kind of the first experience I had with finding a mentor in this space, right? As I had other people I was working with and consulting and stuff, but as I was building this out, I picked up a book, Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port. I read it. I fell in love with it. Michael talked about how he ran his business, right? And talked about, we do this on these days and we do that, it was very scalable. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is terrific stuff. And he talked about, back then he had a mastermind group called the Alliance that he ran out of Philadelphia. And I was like, I want to be a part of this group, And so I'm like, well, he's a New York Times bestselling author. I'm just reading a book of some guy's name, right? So again, you're faced with this spot of imposter syndrome. And what I've learned is you have to get past the imposter syndrome in order to find the mentor. There's a connection there, right? Because I was at a decision point. I could have put the book down and gone, that was great, awesome, like, cool. But instead, I actually tried to dig up information on Michael and reach out to him. And I actually called and found out about programs he was running. And I bought one of them, And so the first time I actually met Michael Port, he was standing in front of the room of this, large hotel room. I flew out to Florida, and attended this live event. And I was like a nobody in this big group, and going, oh my gosh, that's Michael Port. He's on stage, right in front of me here. I took a couple of opportunities. It wasn't like hundreds and hundreds of people. So I took the opportunity to try to meet his staff and get a little time with him. But, as people are, we talked about the celebrity category, right? As people are kind of in that celebrity category, they, don't have tons of time for that. And you want to be a little cautious. Well, I really liked the experience. I really liked what I was doing there, and the people were great, and the people I met there turned out even today to be close friends. But the one thing that I never sort of let go out of my head was I want to figure out how to do what he's doing. And so I just started offering help. Like I was like, hey, can I help pass out name tags? Can I do whatever, like anything that would be of assistance, even if it was menial? And they were actually very gracious. They didn't make me pass out name tags, but they suggested a few things. And after a couple of meetings like that, his staff and his partner, Matthew Kimberly, who is now like a dear friend of mine, that dude is like amazing. He called me up and he said, hey, we have a speaking slot in our next event that's going to be out in California for an hour. We're giving a couple of people who are in the group like a chance to get up on stage and speak. You want to take it? It's not going to be paid. You're not getting any kind of, you still have to pay your own way to get there, all that stuff. Just letting you know. And I'm like, absolutely would love to do it. Let's talk about email marketing. And he's like, great. Sounds like a great topic. So I did a 1-hour speech on email marketing, and apparently it was good because a few minutes after the session ended and I walked out into the hall, Matthew ran up to me and he's like, what the hell did you do? I'm like, what are you talking about? And they go, people are getting upset that they weren't able to attend your session. I'm like, I have no idea. I just taught my regular stuff. And he's like, okay, well, we need to do an encore. We're moving our 2:00 slot off. You're doing it again at 2:00. And I'm like, that's great. I'd love to. Yeah, no problem. So I did it again at 2, except this time Matthew and Michael were in the back of the room watching. So I'm like now nervous. So I do the speech. I do the talk again on email marketing. Again, we got the same kind of rave reviews. And Michael came up to me in the hallway himself. And he pulled me aside and he goes, for somebody who I've never worked with in speaking and training before, you did an amazing job. I have to have you speak at my events. And then from that moment on, Michael took me under his wing and I became sort of like, he became my first mentor. I mean, he was because I paid him, but then he really like paid attention. I became one of his elite coaches, like top 5 of his organization, and led a lot of his sessions, spoke at a couple of events that he had, moderated a couple of panels for him and things like that. And even though I don't interact with Michael that much anymore as he's moved on to heroic public speaking, he made an impact on my life and is still a dear friend. Like, I went to Christmas dinner at his house and, we had a lot of fun. But for me, the lessons were, you have to step out, right? You have to believe in yourself and step out. You have to find somebody who has what you want, right? And you have to be of service to them and ask. And I did. Like I just said, what can I do? And at one point, I even offered to him, hey, I'll run your entire marketing campaign for your book launch for Steal the Show and the podcast launch. I ran both of those events for him. And Steal the Show was a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and a lot of it because of the processes that we put in place, and and we did some really unique and cool things to launch that book. So, and from that, a lot of stuff has flowed. And now as I look at other mentors, I do the same thing. I say, I got to step out of my comfort zone. I need to be of service. I need to ask. And I get a lot of feedback from other people. A lot of I ask around, like, hey, what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? So networking is a critical component to that as well. But it all starts with your ability to step outside yourself and say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to move to the next level.
Love it. So good. So speaking of next level, what do you see on the horizon for you? Do you have anything that you are looking at that you can share, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
what's next for the friend Bria?
So one of the things that I'm working on right now, and we're running it in beta. We haven't publicized it. We're not doing ads or webinars or whatever. In fact, I'm getting angry emails from some people in my list that are like, when's the next webinar? I'm like, calm down, folks. We're testing some stuff first. But I'm looking to fill a hole that I see in the marketplace for teaching people how to create an offer in that ultra high ticket space. I call it ultra high ticket just to kind of, connect with what other people think is ultra high ticket. But
So what is ultra high ticket? Is that
I think
starting at
it's 100K,
100K
and
and
higher.
up?
Yeah. So it's going to be for consultants. It's going to be for authors, business authors. It's going to be for folks who provide business services to corporates. Because you're going to charge 100 grand. You can definitely charge 100 grand to solopreneurs for sure. There's ways to do it. I work with people who do it all the time, but there's plenty of people who talk about that. When you start selling into a corporation, it's a very different dynamic, right? And you have to approach it differently. And there aren't a lot of people who are positioned well in that space to do that. So I'm working right now with a couple of clients sort of in beta on a process where we're mentoring them. One of the clients that I'm working with right now runs a consulting with some software on the side. And they've never really been able to crack the like 200,000, 300, 250, 300 kind of range on a regular basis. And they sell into corporates. And so we've redesigned the offering to make it more appealing at a higher price point. So they're not selling $30,000 engagements anymore. They're selling $120,000, $150,000 ones. And building essentially the pipeline review discipline to actually sell into corporates. It's a very different process where, when you're selling, I think, lower priced items, you can do like one call closes, you do the webinar to close kind of funnel. And, in this game, that doesn't work, right? You have to do something else. So a lot of that is follow-up. A lot of it is value proposition. A lot of it's case study analysis. So we do that kind of work with them right now. And our first folks out of that are just finishing that program like next month. And so that'll be the next thing that launches probably next year.
Awesome. Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Gosh, again, we talked for so long. I'm like, what?
Yeah, what's left to ask me?
And unfortunately, my listeners haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah, that's true.
But again, we're going to have you back for a masterclass where we're really going to dig into teaching some really, really cool stuff about high ticket offers. But for now, I guess we're kind of coming to the end, unless there's something I kind of want to ask, like, what do you want to share? What do you think would be a value that you would like to leave listeners with or feel would be useful from your own personal experiences of being a business owner and scaling, and kind of a takeaway that people can use themselves?
Yeah, look, I think this is going to sound trite, I guess, but the opportunity for most entrepreneurs, I would even say all entrepreneurs, is finding that dimly lit corner that everyone says you can't go into. Okay, like, when I talk about scalable services, I mean, I deal with consultants, and I talk about scalable consulting, and people are like, "That doesn't exist." I'm like, yeah, it does. You just don't think it does. Or I tell people, hey, you need to be raising your prices. You need to be charging more. And they immediately say, I can't do that. I don't have anything of value there. It's all going to be the value proposition, your ability to move up, to accelerate, to exponentially grow, is always going to be found in that dark corner that you don't think you can walk into. And so I would just challenge people, walk into the corner, like challenge the belief that you can't do it. Challenge the belief that it doesn't exist. It does. There are people out there who are doing this stuff all the time. A lot of that stuff, unfortunately, gets programmed into us from the stuff we read online, on our Facebook feeds and our Instagram feeds, right? We see people with, well, I guess I need some kind of a cool Instagram following. I need to wait until I have like 150,000 Instagram followers before I can make that work. Well, no, that's not true. I assure you, there are people who are very wealthy that don't even have an Instagram account. So it's stuff like that sort of conventional wisdom about how things are put together that I want to sort of break that mold. In particular, the key always is the same, which is you need to find that absolutely I got to have it value proposition. You need to design the offer around that, And once you've nailed that, the rest comes. You don't have to have a fancy funnel. You don't have to have fancy sales tactics. You don't have to have manipulative NLP techniques, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you just need a really good offer that your audience wants and targeted correctly. And that's the beginning. That's the beginning.
Very, very cool.
So I hope I didn't just insult a bunch of NLP practitioners.
You know what? I'm not worried about it because I don't like those kinds of tactics. And I don't think those people who like those kinds of tactics listen to my show because they probably don't like me very much. So we're good.
All right, good.
Awesome. So where can my audience go? How can they continue the conversation with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on social media. You can find me on Twitter at Frank Bria. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/7figuresexpert. Sorry for the totally, rude link there, but it was available. So I took it.
Number
the number 7. Thank you.
Number 7.
Number 7. But if you want, we're going to do a masterclass on this later, and we'll schedule it and all that stuff, and when it's going to come. But if you want to get a little bit of a jump start on how you put a high ticket program together, we put a quick blueprint together that you can kind of walk through that helps you craft the offer, understand what's necessary to deliver that offer, and to do so scalably. And you can just find that at frankbria.com/blueprint.
Perfect. Love it.
So
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a blast.
Yeah.
We have to do this again sometime.